since we are talking about AI across sectors, Vidhya, I'd like to start with you. How is AI basically being used in the banking industry? We have seen a lot of use cases where we are talking about the peripherals, like we are talking about the appealing things like chatbots, virtual assistants, all the kind of bells and whistles, as we say. But obviously they're being built on very, very robust kind of frameworks, as most of us know that the BFSI sector is probably the airline sector. They are among the leading kind of players or the sectors where AI is concerned. So what are the kind of trends that you are seeing in your sector, and what is the kind of strategy that is being used in the BFSI sector? Let's start with
my thought process is slightly different. What I see is that although we were pioneers in a lot of them, we are still playing a lot of catch-up. Either it is to get used to the new technologies, get it to work for us, or competing in the markets globally. So we are still doing that. But having said that, there is a lot of work which is going into AI when it comes to banking, especially where I come from. So we start with the structured data. So the customer's data is available with us. The transaction processing data is also available with us. So I can do a lot of data analytics on top of it. I can build my predictive model on top of it. I can even prescribe some models by bringing in a sales propensity base, which is going to increase my hit rate to convert a client or appeal for his wallet share. All these have been done in the past, have been happening for a very long time. Considering my current area of work, which is more into anti-money laundering and fraud detection, we are targeting on the unstructured data. Imagine whatever data that I just spoke about, it's only 20% of the bank's data, the structured. The unstructured data is forming 80% of the data. So there is a lot that we can do, a lot which is happening, and that's where we are headed. So unstructured data primarily, for the people who, I'm sure all of you know about it, but generally in one sentence, it is anything which is not fitting into a row or column. That is all unstructured data. So whether I'm calling a bank and my voice getting recorded, when I'm writing an email to appeal for some complaints, so these are the unstructured data where there is a lot of scope that we see which is yet to be tapped. So that is where we are headed.
So good. So basically you're dealing more with, I like the emphasis on unstructured data. And I would obviously at some point in time also like you to define what do you mean exactly by that unstructured data, because many people have a very different understanding of unstructured data from social media impressions, etc. But we have had this conversation on unstructured data. But I'll come back to you on this. Deepak, you're in the same sector. We have had multiple conversations over the years of how AI and ML is being used in banks. Now I know that you're also using a pretty sophisticated AI chatbot, which is KR. And of course, you're also using it for KYC. And I think Mr. Sharma also just spoke about how it's being used in the BFSI sector and other sectors also. So what is the kind of progress that AI, ML has made, advanced analytics? Have you seen a progress, or is it that the same work is being done and it's being sort of solidified over this period?
No, I think, Leslie, we are going through building blocks of adoption of AI, because earlier the challenge was to bring data in. I think all organizations have invested in the data stack, be it warehouse or data lake or moving data to cloud or making sure that we have the streaming of data through Kafka queues and all. So all the technology-led building blocks, I think, of data and those investments are pretty much done. I think where we are seeing focus now is increasingly the adoption and use cases where we can use. So just to give you a few examples, and I think AI for us is one of our core ABCD charter, where A stands for AI-enabled application. I don't want to get into B, C, and D here, but I think relevant for this is A. And so we picked up AI as everywhere. So now, for example, the whole operation and backend, which is typically an invisible layer, but that's where a large part of cost sits for any financial institution. Most processes today have moved to a robotic process automation, predictive learning based, and in fact, 2/3 of all our processes today, no human touches at all. So that's something that we could achieve. We still have a 1/3, and that's a long tail, but I think there's a lot happening there. The other big use case in financial service is around credit and risk based analytics, because as we heard, the whole flow-based lending, your ability to predict what is the chances of a delinquency, should you underwrite, not underwrite a particular loan, because your cost of onboarding can be at more higher than the cost of collection, and both can be far higher than at times the value of the loan. So I think we are using it both for early warning system, where we can predict the fraud, we can predict the delinquencies, and also credit underwriting. In customer front end, like you spoke about chatbot, but I think there is a lot beyond. We have moved the voice-based authentication. Now we have built our own facial authentication using AI. That's our proprietary stack. So we are looking at moving away from device-based facial auth like what Apple and Samsung offer, to building our own financial proprietary facial auth.
You're also using image recognition, OCR for...
Yes, now even for check writing, handwriting recognition, ensuring that the check is authenticated. The whole fraud risk management is largely AI based, because you have to take a real-time decision on whether to allow a transaction or put it through a step-up authentication or decline a transaction. So basis a lot of this data, I think, which we are not just looking at our own data, but connecting to a larger ecosystem where we plug in a lot of data, we are able to build a customer 360 for real-time fraud risk assessment. So I think this is impacting every part of our life. And just the last one, in fact, in the last 6 months, we invested significantly with Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, where we have set up now a center for AI and machine learning and fintech. So it's our commitment not just to do things, but also build a much larger talent pool so that they can come back and start solving many problems that we have not solved yet.
Correct. Vinod, in your case also, other than the BFSI, retail, e-commerce, etc., Airlines is one of the with classic examples and of advanced analytics, I think, and the airlines and the aviation sector as such has always been very advanced. In fact, actually, in 1920, I don't know for people who know, today we talk about driverless cars, but we had the autopilot way back in 1920. So it's that advanced. So when it comes to AI and ML, for the audience, maybe perhaps it's instructive to know that Vistara was the first 100% cloud-based IT operations management system among the airlines as such. So how advanced is it? For you, customer satisfaction is as important, if not more important. At least in the banks, we can't go then, immediately, right? But with the airlines, you can stand at the counter. So how's AI and ML helping and solving all these kind of issues? Give us some examples.
Sure. Leslie, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure. So before I jump into how AI ML is really, helping the aviation or airline business, I think let's understand what are the guiding principles for AI. I think fundamentally AI needs good quality data. So a lot of the effort which is going into is the data quality. Not only the quality of data, but the integrated view of the data. So there's a lot of AI built in there where you do a lot of deduplication, because airlines, you don't ask customer to give me the Aadhaar card. They can book with minimal IDs and that data record is in your database. And the same person may call you after 10 days with a different booking, but the same person. But look at now the experience part of it. The person thought that, I took last time the vegetarian meal, and now that preference is not coming. But the person is forgetting that last time I gave telephone number 1, and this time is telephone number 2. So that is how the world we are actually working on. So the first thing is, do we have the 360-degree view of customer? If the same logic goes to the operations, do you have the 360-degree view of the operations? Because there's a lot of data exchange which is happening between the aircraft and the systems, customer and the systems. So AI, if you look at the complete value chain of airlines, whether it is the booking flow, whether it is the the check-in, whether it is the in-flight, or even the post-travel. So data is generated everywhere, particularly last 2 years have been where the people have moved from offline to online because of the choices of the technology or because of the regulatory compliance. So there is data everywhere. Okay, so the AI becomes a lot more important for us to really move the needle from a reactive to a proactive to a predictive model. So I think that's where the game we're playing from the digital transformation perspective. And the examples you asked, Leslie, is, for example, the customer engagement. What kind of offer I can give to a customer, and what customer we're talking about. Is it a loyal customer, loyalty-based customer? Is it a Club Vistara customer? Is it a customer who is domestic? Is it a customer who is a business class customer? So all that filtering of the data offers is done through AI. And also, if you look at the whole engine of the route, which routes we should really run these aircrafts. And some may be because of the route profitability, some may be because we want to get into it because a lot of volume is there on that route. So AI again plays a route there. And very important from the safety point of view. See, customer, if the flight is delayed, for example, customer sees the flight is delayed, why it is delayed, and it impacts the customer experience. But a lot of things happen behind the scenes for the engineering department. So engineering department has to get the safety data. And the time they get typically is between the landing and takeoff. So if there is a big fault in the aircraft for a part, and if you are able to pass that information in real time, and they can run the AI on top of it before the flight lands, they can actually work on it. So it's basically, there are a lot of use cases which you'll see that, and on top of it, one more thing which is very important for us is the whole regulatory compliance. See, airlines is a very regulated industry. So we have to make sure that the data privacy, the government regulations are completely adhered to.
Yeah, that I will come to in a bit when we
Absolutely.
talk about the challenges. But as for now, we're just talking about the promise of AI as such. So Jayanth, as it is, I always ask you to speak last because that, you know the reason well. Because absolutely. Because as an analyst, you're looking at so many other domains.
Right.
You're trying to listen to all the kind of voices, and also there's some kind of, you're comparing it how mature are these AI frameworks, the AI models, the AI building blocks in sectors in India, say, as compared to global counterparts.
Thanks, Leslie. And as analysts and industry observers, we actually, are always looking at the evolving and cutting edge trends in terms of technology evolution, and also, at different hotspots around the world, geographically speaking, right? So, one thing that I'd like to talk about, the big elephant in the room, especially when it comes to AI adoption and innovation curves and trends, is the 2 years of COVID. Right? I mean, and literally when it comes in the context of AI adoption and innovation, we've had, to give a biblical parallel, a BC and an AD era, before Corona and after Delta, literally, right? So what we are observing, a lot of changes have happened, at a macro level. China's AI supremacy has sort of been nullified, but at a macro level, this was in 2019, China had 30,000 AI patents, 16,000 of which were in computer vision, okay? And, now, and they launched the social credit scoring, okay? Which, after 2 years of COVID, a lot of their innovation seems to be, not used. But at the same time, we are actually seeing, a lot of innovation and adoption in India taking off, right? So, across industries, some ups and downs, especially the direct-to-consumer industries such as retail and OTT, media streaming and consumption, travel, all these which were using, AI engines, especially for recommendation engines and predictive analytics, which were using AI pre-COVID, had to reset their data sets because the, consumer behavior and the consumption patterns had changed, right? But at the same time, a lot of companies across industries in India had, used this 2 years of COVID to advance their digital transformation and AI adoption, practices and plans, right? For example, 58, I mean, this is industry data, 58% of the companies which were looking to get on the digital transformation bandwagon by 2025, got on board in 2020-21, out of which 65%, almost 2/3 of them adopted AI, right? So we are seeing a lot of these changes, and also, we work, being from Bangalore, we work a lot with startups. We are seeing, the AI, innovative AI solutions from India going global. Okay, and one other trend that we've seen is the AI innovation and solutions used to be products earlier. Now they've become features as a part of other products. So we are actually in India in the last 2-3 years. We've seen the adoption and innovation curves take a steep slope towards an upward trend.
So I think undoubtedly, I mean, from the conversations, you clearly see that there's a lot of digital adoption, acceleration of digital adoption after COVID. I think that's a no-brainer. All of us have agreed on that. And that AI is here to stay, and that the promise is clearly delivering is also clear. But clearly also there are challenges. I think Vinod did touch upon them in the form of data. Now he put it in a very positive way, saying that it is directly correlated to the kind of data that you put in. But if you turn the question, flip the question on its head, it's bad data, dirty data would cause a lot of problems. Then there are regulations which affect both your industries, your unstructured data. So let's come to a couple of challenges here and there with them. So you could probably speak about the unstructured data. What unstructured data are you talking, and what are the kind of other challenges that you're facing?
Okay, so when we were discussing separately, Leslie, I got the other view of how people look at unstructured data. When I say unstructured data, it suddenly becomes social media data, or something which is more publicly available, a news alert which is coming in, anything, you can crawl the web and get it. So that is at a generic level of looking at it. When I talk about unstructured data, it is still something which the bank can hold at its end. I'm talking about the papers which are coming in. Say, for example, there is a supplier, and the contract which the supplier has signed along with the bank, that becomes an unstructured data for me because it's in the form of a paper. And it is also in a form of text. Even though it is digital, it is text, and I have to ask my machine to make sense of it. That becomes my natural language processing problem statement. So when I call unstructured data, this is a classic example. Lot of us fill applications, whether online or offline. And we also raise complaints to the, any kind of inquiry or complaints with the bank. And we expect a reply back from them. So that becomes an unstructured data as well. I call the call center or the customer service executive, and there is an interaction that happens, and they also specify that we are recording this transaction for our internal quality assurance. So that these are the data which can be picked up and also completely processed using the AI technology to make sense of it. So what kind of troubles are, so very classic example is, there is a repetitive problem. One complaint is not getting closed at all. There are multiple conversations happening, and there is also multiple emails running around. So these two are actually two channels, but my AI can actually crawl through my bank's network to find out it's the same customer who is doing that. So there is another technology which is catching up in the market, and a lot of people are using, is the knowledge database, knowledge graph in the database. Knowledge graph is nothing but your relational database, whatever you have, that has a limit. After a point in time, it can't move beyond that. But knowledge graphs give you that opportunity to capture all the data pertaining to, say, for example, Leslie. I have 2 Leslies in my bank, and I have 2 different sets of data. I can put all the data belonging to you in one node, and I can put the other Leslie's data there. But when there is a transaction which is coming in, or I have to investigate something, my knowledge graph will be able to make a connection and find out if it is you or not.
Okay, I think I get the point, because out here you're talking about still the potential of the AI. But let's ask Deepak. Okay, Deepak, all these tools are available. You are equally aware because you're in that sector itself. What are the kind of challenges? I mean, earlier remember the kind of challenges we should talk about moving from legacy systems to the modernization of it. Some part of it does exist, but a lot of complication comes to these tools itself.
No, absolutely. I think as you move up the ladder, you find new challenges, right? So that's part of the game. So earlier, availability of data and volume of data was a challenge. That's pretty much sorted. But velocity of data and veracity of data, these are the two that I would still say we have grounds to cover, because how authentic the data is and how quickly do we get the data, because data is something, if you can't really do something at times in the real time, it's of no use. So a lot of times people say, oh, we have so much data. It's not about so much of data. It's like, I keep internally saying, data is like the water that is flowing through the river. Either you use it to generate electricity or power, or it'll just go waste. So data is becoming and I think organizations are realizing the value of just-in-time action that you can do with data, and how do we build it. I think we still have a way to go there. I think the other challenges that I see here is the whole cognitive bias. And that's my favorite, because I keep saying that if your training data is X, your output or your predictive learning also will get trained on that data, and you will end up doing this. For example, if we think that the certain PIN code or location has bad payment history of individuals, just because some percentage, either it can be around race, region, and then you start using this as a data input to train, all of a sudden you'll realize that you have started to decline a lot of good customers. So that's where the cognitive biases in any kind of data science comes in, and which I would say is a challenge not just for us, it's a global challenge.
Absolutely.
As to how do we solve. And I think the third I would say, and the last, is largely the trained manpower. I think we are still in a space where the demand is far higher than the quality of trained people who understand this really well. So I think between all these three, we have to solve for it as we go ahead.
Fair enough. A couple of challenges that are specific to your sector as such. I mean, some of them are obviously very common. I mean, whether it's a question of data, whether it's a question of other.
Correct. I think I will probably skip those, but I will just name them. I will not get into more details. So breaking the data silo is very important for us. And we say that we have to move from big data to the wide data. I think the whole connection, how these data are integrated, that is the journey we are going through. Second is, I think the most important, if I have to pick one thing, that is the customer expectations. I think if I had to take the whole genesis of this, workshop, is that customers have choice to use AR, VR, Metaverse, Web 3.0. Look at it that avatar of customer is going through the web and buying, first of all, experiencing the whole journey of buying tickets. Not only that, they want to actually create a digital lifestyle brand for themselves. They don't want to only buy airline tickets. They want to also book the hotels. They want to also book the rental car. They want to also go to Paris through this virtual reality medium. So that is what we are talking about. Now we have taken all the time to build the systems which were supposed to, say, serve 5 channels. And suddenly you have got 10 more channels to cater to. So how do you keep pace and without impacting your customer experience, without impacting or compromising on the quality? I think that will be a constant, good problem to solve, and which is good for us which is keeping us on the toes. Rest regulatory we talked briefly. Then the other thing which is very different in the airlines is that we have got a lot of SaaS platforms. So a lot of data resides there. And how do you do innovation around your customers, products, services, and still make a difference? Because some of these are community platforms. So you don't have per se an element of innovation there. So how do you put those 6 thinking hats and say that, I can do different? I think that is one thing which is again a good element for us to keep our innovations on the top.
Fair enough. And I think we're speaking about all the kind of virtual banking that we're having, virtual purchases, but at the end of the day, you have to take a physical flight. You have to get into the bank and have physical money. Of course, unless you're dealing with cryptocurrency, which the government won't allow. But we'll not get into that. Jayanth, we'll get into the final leg of it because challenges, I think, more or less are similar across all sectors. But I think what everybody, the major question that people have been asking, CXOs included, asking how do you get ROI from these initiatives? Because earlier also, that was a very major question. How acute is that question still? Because now I think even boardrooms are, it's a top-down kind of approach where people are seeing a lot of value in AI. So what are the kind of metrics that are there that have changed over a period of time?
In terms of metrics, I think a lot of work that earlier data scientists used to do is sort of now taken over, and sort of has been commoditized. I mean, in Bangalore, data vectorization as a service is a cottage industry, right? 3 years ago, if you ask any data scientist, he would say, I'd spend 90% of my time, just collecting, labeling data. But now all of that is being done. And in the last 2-3 years, AI has sort of also become the true deep tech industry, like electricity, wireless telecom, and maps, which stays at the back and creates a lot of value. Okay, so now the metrics have evolved. Okay, in terms of true blue value creation, okay, with data thinking and AI algos, okay, not just straightforward cost savings or revenue enhancement, but innovative partnership models, not just in your value chain. Value chains are actually becoming matrix based right now, not straightforward anymore. And in the boardrooms, the decision makers are sitting and thinking that every company going forward is going to become a data company, right? I mean, they're going to generate data, use data in some or other form. How can we, create value to a player who's completely outside our ecosystem and, form innovative partnership models? These are some of the metrics, essentially, when it comes to, in terms of value creation using data and AI models is what the boardrooms are thinking these days.
We have actually run out of time. I think clearly you have the promise of AI. Clearly there are a lot of challenges out there, but the banking industry and at least the aviation industry, you have promised you that they are going to address it. They are addressing it. So on this good note, please give them a big hand. Thank you, gentlemen.